Hi, Michaela here. Invalidation really hurts. In this video, I'm going to talk a little bit about that, and I'm going to give you 3 different strategies for dealing with it, dealing with the aftermath of being or feeling invalidated. So why does invalidation hurt so much? I think there's something so basic about feeling connected to other people and feeling valid in who we are. And so often there are so many ways that we reach out for connection or we reach out for some kind of affirmation. And when we don't get it, it can be really painful. And it can be even more painful when we're not getting it in a situation where it really feels very important to our own livelihood and to our own liveliness somehow, to our own ability to hold on to our own opinions on our own ground, and particularly when it endangers a connection. So for example, if somebody starts to form a different set of beliefs than their family has, and they know that if they start to speak to this other set of beliefs, they're going to get disconnected from the family, that would be a major form of invalidation of the new sense of reality that's emerging for that person, and that endangers a connection to their whole family, maybe their whole extended community. So that is an extreme form of how invalidation can do harm. But actually, invalidation does harm in all sorts of sizes, all sorts of shapes. For example, let's say that I do a video and I feel pretty good about it, but I still feel like a little bit nervous, or I'm kind of hoping that I said things correctly. And I talk to somebody and I say, hey, so did you see my video? What did you think of it? If they say, yeah, I didn't really watch it, I don't really bother, that's gonna sting a little bit, right? And second, if they say, oh yeah, I watched it, it was fine. Here are 14 suggestions I have on how to optimize your videos. Maybe depending on the day or depending on my mood. On one hand, I might feel validated in that, oh hey, they care enough about me to give me tools and different ways to optimize. And on the other hand, I might feel really stung, and I might feel like they're not getting my overall purpose. So we need some level of validation in order to take in feedback, in order to grow, in order to learn. And getting validation tends to help us know that we're okay, that we're connected, that we can express ourselves. And so it can just be anywhere from kind of minorly to massively painful not to get it. And the impact can range from really mild to really severe. Now, one other thing I want to say is invalidation isn't always invalid. There can be times that invalidation is really useful in some way. Let's say that, now I'm trying to think of an example of when, let's say that I'm planning to go to a place of business and I'm really excited to go get coffee at this coffee shop, and I'm telling a friend how great it is, and they're like, yeah, it's closed. It's been closed for a month. Okay, so I might feel invalidated, right? Like I want to do something and they're saying not to do it. Plus, I've been talking about how great this coffee is and I miss that the place has been closed for a month. Maybe not the best example of invalidation. That seems more like just giving a fact that's to the contrary. But yeah, think of situations where actually you might say something, you might be wrong, and it might be really helpful for somebody to point that out. A, great that they pointed that out. B, can still be painful. Some of it is to do with the manner in which people point it out, and some of it is just that it can hurt sometimes when we're going along with a particular reality or a particular sense of how we are in some way or something that we want to do, and suddenly it's being called into question. So my tips are going to work whether you are completely in the right and you're being invalidated and it's painful on that level, and even like if you're feeling like abandonment is impending or has already come as a part of this invalidation. These tips will work in that situation, and they will also work in the situation where actually you've been invalidated, it hurts, and actually the other person has a point, which happens sometimes. So some ways to navigate this. The first way is to really take care not to abandon yourself. So often when we feel invalidated, it can be really, really easy to get self-belittling, to deny our own reality, or to just feel kind of rotten, and to kind of start to want to hide, or to just start to kind of blame ourselves or beat ourselves up. And so my first tip is really find ways to take care of yourself, find ways to stay with your own reality. Even if you need to reevaluate some things, find ways to really stay with you. Whether that's like stepping back and taking a bath, or it's talking to a good friend, or it's finding a way that you can reaffirm your own values in your own mind, even just internally saying, yeah, this is really important to me. Stick with yourself. You don't have to jump ship to the people invalidating you, and you don't have to self-belittle yourself as a result. And you also don't have to go into attack mode. So stay with you. The second tip is written down over here, and it is to check the facts, actually, so that you can actually look at this. Sometimes when we've been really damaged by invalidation in the past, or we felt it a lot in our lives, it can be easy to actually see invalidation where maybe it's not that. So you might check for alternative interpretations or alternative reasons somebody may have said something to you. Or let's say that you feel invalidated sometimes when you say something really excited and important and it's met with silence, or the other person changes the topic. Being able to actually look at the facts of what's happening and try and keep yourself from going to really extreme conclusions. They are silent because they absolutely don't believe me, or they're mocking me in their own mind. And consider other reasons that they might be silent at that point. I've had it happen where I've said something, the other person's gone silent, and I've started to feel that kind of pit in my stomach thing. And then later they say, I've just been thinking about what you said. It just hit me in such a profound way. So I've learned that silence is not always invalidation. And so being able to look, now there are obviously really, really clear-cut situations where, yeah, you are being invalidated. And maybe the fact that you check there is just, are you still able to be yourself with some people in your life? That's really important. Sometimes if we've grown up feeling invalidated, it's like there's nobody that we can be ourselves around. So if you're a grown-up now watching this video, there are people probably in your life, and if they're not there now, you can find them who will validate you and who will value you for who you are, and who will share some of the opinions that you have, or some of the quirks, some of the ideas. So that's another way to check the facts. And then the third tip is also in my notebook. Self-validate. So consider ways that you can actually, and I had already said you could say this really matters to me internally, but even finding ways to go beyond that. Maybe think about, what would you say to a friend if they'd been invalidated in this way? Let's say that somebody that you really care about approaches you and they tell you the story of the invalidation that you just experienced. What do you feel for them? Sometimes it can be hard to feel empathy for ourselves, but by touching into the empathy we'll feel for somebody else, we'll get a little bit of distance and maybe gain a little bit of self-compassion. Another way you can self-validate is say that you have a behavior that you don't really like, and maybe it's not a valid response to what's happening in the current moment. If you actually look back into the past, you'll be able to find a situation where your response is valid. So let's say that you get really shut down from time to time, like you go silent and you feel really bad about that. If you look back in time, you might discover that there was a time in your life where going silent and shutting down was absolutely the best thing to do, because maybe the people around you weren't going to listen to you at that point in your life. So you can self-validate not just your behavior or your perception right now, but you can actually self-validate in kind of a more layered way of like, yeah, this behavior, it doesn't make a lot of sense right now. It's not so productive, but man, when I was 6 years old, that little girl had a good strategy, right? So that's one way to do that. I hope these tips are helpful. Please feel free to leave comments. Be moderately validating if you can. And I so look forward to connecting with you more. Thank you and goodbye.